Welcome to the U3 Media Podcast, where our mission is to unite the world through coffee. I'm Christy Ross, and joining us today is Bill Murray, CEO of National Coffee Association, also known as the NCA. Welcome, Bill. Thanks for coming on the show.
Christy, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I want to set the stage for you. You have led some of the world's most respected trade organizations, the MPAA in movies, the PRSA in public relations, and now the NCA in coffee. You've received the honor of Outstanding Association Executive of the Year from the New York Society of Association Executives, I want to say back in 2009. And you continue to apply your leadership skills in the industry we know and love as coffee. So after a long career in the film industry and public relations, I have to ask this question. Has anybody mistaken you for the other Bill Murray?
Boy, what a question. You know, as a matter of fact, when I worked in the movie business, this would happen all the time. I would go to a film festival. People would see my name on a hotel directory, and they would come knock on my door, and they'd ask if they could be in my movie, and it got kind of ridiculous. I mean, a French woman came up to see me at the Cannes Film Festival, and it was a little bit like a who's on first. She said, I want to meet Bill Murray. I am Bill Murray. She said, no, you're not. Yes, I am. And we sort of went around like that until she gave up. She gave me an 8x10 glossy with her acting resume on the back and walked away. So, yeah, it's happened more than you would think, Christy.
That's a great story. So then how did you actually come to be the CEO of the NCA? Bridging all the way from, film.
Well, I learned about the opening. I was working at the public relations organization. It was a professional organization representing 32,000 PR professionals and students. I had been there for about a decade. I was looking for something different, learned about the opening, and the more I read about the organization and coffee, the more interested I got. So believe it or not, I just applied for the job like you apply for any other kind of job.
Okay. Well, then, did you know much about the coffee industry or prior to joining at all? Or did you just like coffee?
Wow. Well, Christy, I guess you're going to get all these confessions out of me today. I knew nothing about the coffee industry, even before I went to the first interview. But, I wanted to make sure I was ready for the conversation. I'm old school. I bought a couple of books. I read the books. I highlighted, I made 3x5 index cards, I studied, and I went to the first interview. I did not pretend to be an expert, but we talked about associations, we talked about industry changing, and it turned out we've been a good fit for each other.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. So strictly so you sort of studied the industry and you learned what the hot topics were, right? What about from an actual coffee perspective, how did you prepare for that? Did you just do a tour of cafes or something?
Well, you're close. At the last place I was working, I had accumulated a lot of vacation. So I said to the folks at the Coffee Association, why don't I take some of that vacation while I'm still working in my old position? Send me someplace. So they sent me to Colombia. I spent 2 weeks in Colombia. We went from laboratories to research facilities. We went to coffee farms. We went to warehouses. I did not become an expert, but I began to learn what I didn't even know. I knew the questions I should be asking. I knew the immensity of the industry. So before I showed up on day one, I kicked the tires a little bit, and I was really excited.
Yeah. Well, just taking that trip, it creates a lot of connections, right? You start to connect everything you read in the books. I mean, that's what sort of happened to me when I jumped into the coffee world. It was once you were able to see it, touch it, feel it, meet people at origin and see what they're doing. It sort of opened my eyes in a lot of ways and definitely, created those connections for me. So what were some of the initial steep learning curve challenges? Was there any particular area within coffee that was a little bit more difficult for you than others?
Yeah, I would say, for me, it's the two ends of coffee. Here's what I mean. Coffee, and we're going to talk more about this, coffee has its agricultural aspects, right? And we're going to talk about what it means to be a coffee farmer and climate change and some of those issues. There is so much to understand about coffee farmers, about agriculture, about insects, about plant physiology. It's endless. And it's not easy to learn because there's a vocabulary that's particular to agriculture and farming. At the other end, some of the work that we do relates to the health impact of drinking coffee. So again, there's an intersection between the world of coffee and the world of medicine and human health. And that too is a whole different world. Medical research, for example. So I think looking at how coffee touches different areas of our lives, disciplines that we normally don't get involved in as sort of lay people, those are some of the big challenges in really getting to know coffee.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. It's sort of like when I said I was going to go into coffee, I didn't realize how interesting it really is and how many other, areas in industry it touches. So yeah, I agree. So I'll confess my most challenging area was sensory, like within coffee, like just learning that it is truly something that is, and I think it just takes practice. And I think that's the whole thing.
Yes.
I don't have all those years, behind me. But okay, so let's talk about the NCA. Share with us what NCA's mission is.
Well, our mission, very simply, is to connect people who have an interest in the U.S. coffee market and help them to be more successful. And whether that's a coffee farmer, whether it's a shipper, whether it's an investor, whether it's a shop owner, whether it's a roaster, we all have an interest in seeing a stronger community and helping each other and ultimately growing our businesses so we can all be more successful. So very simply, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, really all across the whole value chain, right? I mean, so you're sort of servicing the whole group. So most end customers aren't really familiar with the SCA or the NCA. So talk a little bit about the differences of those two organizations and really what the SCA is in comparison, as well as sort of where the two of those are aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I'm not sure who's going to be watching and listening, so we can just take a half a step back. The SCA is a Specialty Coffee Association, and the NCA is the National Coffee Association. And so, Christy, I think you nailed it. People reduce this to NCA, SCA. What's the difference? What do you guys do? I thought your lead into this question was perfect. The SCA really focuses on the sensory or the tasting aspects of coffee. You mentioned this whole world of sensory. When we talk about specialty coffee in this business, what we really mean is, in particular, coffees that get a certain score. What a lot of people don't realize is just like there are wine tasters, there are coffee tasters. There are professionally certified people who taste coffee. When they taste that coffee, they are giving it a grade or a score. So for coffee to be specialty coffee, technically, it's got to have a certain score. So the SCA is really focused on those aspects of the industry that relate to specialty coffee, the sensory aspects, those businesses that are tightly focused on specialty coffee. We're here for everybody. We're here for specialty coffee. We're here for large companies. And we're especially focused on the business of coffee versus the sensory aspects in particular.
Yeah, makes sense. So what would you say are the top 3 things people in the coffee industry need to know about NCA?
The top 3 things. Wow, lists are always great, aren't they? First of all, everybody thinks that we're just here for really big companies. We're here for little companies, big companies, and everybody in between. So that's the first thing. The second thing, we are an advocate for the industry. So we speak out on a lot of big issues, but we also deliver practical, technical, everyday tools that you can use to make your business stronger. For example, a food safety plan. So when the health inspector shows up, you've got a template that can help you pass that inspection. And the third thing is we are a people business, the coffee industry. You mentioned a little early, Christy, all the connections that you've made already in the coffee sector. That's what makes coffee work. That's how I can be here. I didn't know anything about coffee. People opened their doors and they taught me. So we're a community. We connect people, big companies, small companies, people that want to be in the business. That's really who we are.
Yeah. And so the NCA is a nonprofit and is membership based, right? And I know you mentioned to me previously you get your funding from really three main sources: membership dues, your annual convention, market research, sales, and contributions, which I do want to talk about the market research, but we'll get into that. Who is your ideal customer or member then? Like you did talk about like who you serve. So is it, you said it's more than just the big players, but I think there's a misconception that it is just the big players, right? So who's the ideal customer or member for you?
You are anybody who has a professionally driven interest in the coffee business versus they think of it as a hobby or a side thing. If you're here to learn, if you're interested, whether you have one coffee shop, two coffee shops, whether you want to invest in an importing business, you belong here. Our membership overall, about 50% of them are roasters, about 20% are coffee traders, importers, people that arrange shipments, and then the rest of the membership is everybody else. So everyone's welcome here. And I know it sounds like a bit of a bad answer, but everybody is here, so there is no ideal member. Everybody's great and welcome.
That's awesome. Well, what you produce is actually very helpful for so many people. I mean, the research that you guys are conducting is amazing. I will say, I love it. I'm a numbers person. So from the end consumer perspective, what are some of the top projects you're working on or have completed that target consumer awareness about coffee?
Yeah, I would say for the last decade, we've really been focused on health issues for consumers. We as people, we're a little conflicted sometimes over our coffee because of the caffeine question. Right? We love that caffeine in the morning. It gets us up. And if we can't sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're thinking maybe it was the caffeine's fault. And what tends to happen is because we think about coffee through this caffeine perspective, all the other health benefits of coffee just get lost in the picture. So we've been working for a decade to really echo and amplify the independent research about coffee that's out there. We don't conduct health research. We don't pay for it. It's not an industry thing. We look at what other folks are doing. Did you know that if you drink 3 cups of coffee a day, you are 13% likely to die from any cause at all, reduced overall mortality? And I could go on and on, Christy. I could talk about liver cancer. I could talk about breast cancer. I could talk about diabetes. But there's an enormous amount of research that tells us how good coffee drinking is. And we need to get that word out so people can balance the health information against their own caffeine perspective.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I feel like you highlighting it all in one place is really helpful. So how does someone, I know we'll talk about this at the very end, but how does someone actually get access to that, that research, that great research that you've done?
A lot of the basic information is on our website, and it's accessible to everybody. The website is ncausa.org, and there's a portion of the website about coffee. And if you look under the About Coffee section, you'll see there's a little Coffee and Health button, and you can start to get a sense of the research and what's out there. And I think how powerful and convincing the research is. I mean, what I just mentioned to you a little bit earlier about living longer if you drink coffee, how do we know that? We know that because medical researchers looked at 21 different research studies. Those studies covered 10 million people. 10 million people. So it wasn't just one study or one researcher, but we put that information up so people can make their own judgments and see for themselves.
Yeah, that's a good testing base. 10 million people. All
Exactly.
right. Yes. So what's on tap for the upcoming annual convention, and when and where is it?
Wow, we're going to be in Nashville, Tennessee. I can't wait. Nashville's a great city, the music history, the food, everything. We're going to be there in March. And of course, you and I are recording this in 2024. So this is March of 2024, 7th, 8th, and 9th of March. So what's going to happen? We are going to be gathering the community, lots of networking. We're going to do a day of service. We're going to go work in some local schools and help the community. We're going to be having some leadership discussions. And then we're going to talk specifically about the industry, about cold brew, about instant coffee, about supply chain issues. We're going to talk about some market research statistics. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. A lot of good fun, too. I won't talk about that, but if you want to learn to do a two-step, maybe that'll be the place to be. I don't know. So.
Well, you really covered all the things that why somebody would come. I mean, there's a lot of things for everybody. But this is not for the general public, right? It's more for the industry. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
this really isn't of interest to the general public. And we do get inquiries. Can I come taste a lot of coffee at sampling booths? That's not what this is. This is really for industry professionals. Exactly what you said, Christy.
Yeah. Well, and you just talked about going into schools and doing some things right in the community while you're there, which I love. So, which really leads me into asking about your charitable efforts. So, I saw that you guys supported Days for Girls charity this past holiday season. So give me sort of the sense of what the NCA focuses on with their charitable giving.
Let me tell you how this all came about. If you are a farmer, any kind of farmer, it's not easy. I mean, if you've tried to grow tomatoes in your backyard or cucumbers, it rains too much, it doesn't rain enough, the insects, the deer. And if you are a farmer and your livelihood, your income depends on farming, this almost becomes a life or death issue for you. Farmers in this country, they get all kinds of support. They get subsidies. We've got great infrastructure, roads, and internet. We've got all sorts of assistance, agricultural extension programs. Coffee farmers very seldom have access to these types of things, whether we're talking about infrastructure, whether we're talking about technical assistance. So over the years, as I was out visiting coffee farmers, I would talk to them about these issues. And I came to learn pretty quickly that there are a lot of organizations, charitable organizations, that are helping coffee farmers with these types of things. There's so many of them that it's almost impossible to say this is the charity. So we set up a program a couple years ago, the NCAA Charity of the Year program. It's really rigorous. We look for charities that are working with coffee communities where coffee farmers are growing coffee. We look at these organizations with respect to their financials, their governance, are they independently run, their results and their impact. And every year we pick a winner of our charity of the year, and we pick a couple of runners up. We give them visibility, we give them access, and we give them our recommendation. If you want to do something to help the industry, you can support them. This year, the charity, as exactly you mentioned, Christy, was Days for Girls. And we should talk about Days for Girls. They're really special. They help girls and young women manage menstruation, manage their periods. these in coffee communities, in coffee producing communities, these girls and young women, they don't have access to personal hygiene products. They don't have access to education. And what happens is for days, every month, they're taken out of circulation. They can't go to school. They can't help their families. We looked really closely at the organization, and we were all really impressed. If you were to ask me 5 years ago if I'd be on a national podcast talking about menstruation, I would have told you no. But, being open and adaptable and learning and doing things that we think are important for the communities, no matter what those things are, is crucial. And that's how we came to support Days for Girls. So anybody who's listening wants to take a look at their website, Days for Girls. You'll find them out there and see for yourself.
That is absolutely fabulous. And I love how you actually created this infrastructure, if you will, or this program that is sort of an annual focus for you. And I love how you discovered them. Yeah, because I agree. I would have bet that no, you weren't going to be talking about that on a podcast. But boy, oh boy, I love that. That's awesome. There's so much more I want to talk about there, but I got to move on to the next topic, which is leadership. So what do you think is one of the most important qualities of a great leader?
Curiosity. I think curiosity, and as we were just talking a moment ago, Christy, I would say adaptability. I think leaders have to be willing to learn, challenge their assumptions. They have to be adaptable to take on issues that are maybe uncomfortable, like the issue we were just talking about a moment ago. They have to take on issues that they think might be peripheral. But we are living in a moment where you really never know what's going to come next, whether it's going to be artificial intelligence, a pandemic, or a charity that walks in the front door that says, we're worthy of your support, and it makes you uncomfortable. So as a leader, I think being curious and adaptable is essential. It's been essential for me over the years.
Yeah, for sure. So leading an association, you mentioned this before, just around networking, right? The importance and the value of networking. And also how those skills are transferable, right, between industries, which you've shown clearly with the different industries you've focused on and led associations through. But share your philosophy on networking and sort of where you developed that philosophy.
Yeah. Wow. I'm actually an introvert, and people, I have this job where I'm talking in front of hundreds of people, or delivering speeches, or delivering testimony before regulators somewhere. I mentioned earlier we have to be adaptable as leaders and as professionals. One of the things that I disliked more than anything in my career was networking. And I knew that if I was going to be successful, I'd have to learn how to network. So how do I approach networking? I try to focus it. So if I walk into a room and there's 50 people in the room, your first reaction, Christy, is, I don't know anybody here, golly, and that makes me feel a little awkward, and what do I do? If you go in with some specific tools and focus, you can get through that. Pick somebody who's standing off by themselves. Walk up to them and just ask them a couple of questions that you're keeping. Hey, I haven't seen you here before. I'm Bill. Nice to meet you. Now, maybe you haven't seen anybody anywhere before because you're new to the industry, but they don't know that, right? Ask them a couple questions about themselves. We all love to talk about ourselves. I mean, you got me to talk about myself, didn't you? That was pretty good. So I think if you stay focused, have a couple of questions, have a simple purpose, a couple of basic skills, that can help immensely. And also, don't ask for things that people may not be able to give you and put them in awkward positions. A lot of networking is done around a job search. And, if you walk up to somebody and you say, hey, I need a job, you have one, you're going to make them uncomfortable. You're probably not going to get the answer that you want right away, but you can approach that in different ways. And hey, I see that you're working for this company. That looks great. How did you get started in that company? So, some tips and tools that I've learned over the years have helped me get past that introvert aspect of my personality.
So, Bill, I'm actually an introvert too, and people go, "No, you're not." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I figured out I'm an ambivert. I can play the role of an extrovert, but deep down, I'm an introvert. But I can relate to all of that. I think one of the other things too that I try to tell people around networking is figure out where you can help someone. Send them a link to an article you've read, or connect in some way where you're actually helping them. And it's also a wonderful way, in addition to asking them about themselves, because I agree that's an easy icebreaker, and I love the advice you gave. Okay, so do you have a life motto or simple words you live by?
The expression is attributed to Gandhi. It is be the change that you wish to see. There's actually some ambiguity over whether he really said that, like there is with everything. We're all pulled in a lot of different directions. We have family obligations. We are members of different types of communities. In the corporations or companies that we work for, we have business objectives and there are profit outcomes that we're looking for. And we've got to figure out, how do we live happily and comfortably, getting pulled in all these directions with the decisions that we make? And I think thinking a little bit about overall what the impact is, and does this contribute to a world in which you want to see, is absolutely crucial. My job, I help a really important industry be more successful. That means more jobs. It means more tax income. It means stronger supply chains for the people that rely upon them. And for all of us who are just coffee drinkers and not professionals, it makes our morning better. So it's one of the reasons, Christy, I love what I do, because I think it reflects how I want to see the world and what I want to see happen as we get older.
Yeah, no, I love that. So is there one piece of advice you'd give to someone that wants to enter the coffee industry that came from another unrelated industry?
Well, wow. As someone who did that, I would say be really hungry to learn. I mean, and what does that mean? It means more than just saying, hey, I want to learn. Get a book, interview somebody, study, go to your local coffee shop off hours, not during the morning rush hour. Ask them about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Be really hungry to learn and be humble. One of the really cool things about this business is that no matter how much you learn about coffee, there's more. I mean, I think about it like an artichoke or an onion. You think you'll learn something, and then there's more, then there's something else. So be humble, right? Come in and say, hey, I've learned a little bit about this, but I'm sure there's a lot I don't know. Make connections that way, network that way, fill in the picture, and better understand where you think you might have a place in this industry.
Yeah, I can relate 100% to that. That's I'm used to being the expert in the room from a financial services standpoint. And as I come in, it's like, there's so much I have to learn, and that will continue, I'm sure, for years to come, but it's exciting and it's fun, along the way. So do you have a piece of advice for someone that's always been in coffee, but wants to start their own coffee, like company, in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I would just say strap in. It's tough because those are early days of any business. I hear from a lot of people, Christy, who want to start their own business. Some of these people, like you, are really sophisticated. I mean, you're just operating at a whole different level. But then I hear from people who have never really been in business and never been in industry. They've got a deep passion. I saw somebody once, he was interviewed, and he was asked, okay, you're 2 years into your business. What do you wish you had known? And he said, I wish I'd saved all the receipts for the equipment that I bought, because my accountant taught me about depreciation and I didn't realize I could have done that thing. And I'm not making fun of it. Like, we're all at different places, right? And so I think if you want to start your own business, you got to do your research, and you got to talk to a lot of people. A lot of people will be willing to talk to you if you present a certain amount of credibility. So research, research, research.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like in real estate, location, location, location. But yes, when you're jumping into business, research, research, research. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to flip over to some consumer focused questions. What is one thing the end consumer can do to help the coffee industry, like an actionable item, besides buying more coffee?
I would say a couple of things. You're really good in this interview. I'm enjoying this. You're asking for one thing. I have a problem. I have a problem distilling into one thing. I would say one thing you can do. There's lots of charitable organizations out there like Days for Girls. They do lots of different things. Look into that. Just sort of scratch the surface. And if you want to make a contribution or a donation to a charitable organization helping coffee farmers, that's a great thing you can do. But the most important thing that consumers can do is learn about their coffee. You would be surprised how many people I talk to who don't realize that coffee grows on trees. And as we talk increasingly about climate change, about the future, to understand where your coffee comes from, how it starts out, this is crucial to being a better consumer, to understanding the coffee companies that you're interested in, what they care about, and how your coffee gets here. So I would say thematically, I'm going to keep coming back to education today, Chrisanne, whether we can learn as professionals, whether I can learn individually about the coffee business as I go deeper into that onion-like artichoke complexity of it, or whether you're a coffee drinker. The cool thing about coffee, there's always more to learn. So jump in and learn.
Yeah, so true. Well, when I entered the coffee industry, I realized there's quite a big difference between coffee professionals and the everyday coffee consumer, which I was, on understanding the true value of specialty coffee, like cost wise, but also the appreciation for the flavor as well. So how can we bridge that gap? And education is for sure, the answer is my assumption here. Is there something more we can do, or is it just about serving up the right education at the right time to those people?
I think it's things like this podcast, to get that story out. We see a lot of coffee shops and they'll do little educational sessions, in off hours. They'll invite people in for a cupping. I developed with my partner a class that we taught at Elon University called The World in Your Cup. And this was an upper level multidisciplinary course where we taught students all about coffee, where it comes from, and the issues in the sector and everything. The course filled up in the first 15 minutes it was open. So there's a lot of hunger. There's a lot of interest. I would say what companies can be doing is helping to educate their consumers. Consumers have to be curious. And we have to just continue to do what we're doing, which is to talk about this, look for opportunities, do great podcasts, and get the word out.
Yeah. So can you share a coffee industry stat that you find interesting? And this one we could do hours of a podcast, I'm sure.
Wow. Yeah. Cold coffee is more and more and more of interest to everybody. When I say cold coffee, not just cold brew coffee, but iced coffee, roughly 1/3 of us like our coffee cold at some point. So think about that. We tend to think stereotypically about that cup of hot coffee. We're recording this on a record-breaking low day. We're all freezing across the country. But cold coffee might be the future.
There we go. All right. So along those same lines, share a random fascinating fact that most coffee consumers probably don't know?
Coffee trees, your coffee grows on a tree, they can live between 20 and 30 years.
Wow. And that is something I did not know.
It's not just about the fact, we think about the environment, right? We think about where our coffee comes from. Imagine rows of coffee trees that have been there through a generation that are providing your morning cup of coffee and what that means, what it means for the environment, what it means for the farmers, and what it means for where your coffee came from and how far back it goes. So 20 to 30 years could be the coffee tree that grew your coffee 6 months ago as you sat down and drank it this morning.
Yeah. Well, and I also saw that the coffee tree, it takes, when you plant it, it takes 3 to 4 years before it even produces coffee, right? I mean, so there is this time frame of planning regarding the farm that is incredible. You think about how much goes into, like you said, that cup of coffee that you're drinking. It's fascinating to me. So, okay, so I'm going to shift over to what I like to call the U3 top three, which are very brief answers. Your favorite brewing method?
I have a brew and grind or a grind and brew machine. And it's a black drip coffee that just grinds, brews, and there it is.
Beautiful. And so for consumption, which I think you just answered, but your coffee drink of choice.
Black coffee. I like to taste my coffee.
Okay. And how many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
3 to 5, depending on the type of day it is.
Perfect. Well, this has been absolutely fabulous, Bill. And I want to give you an opportunity to share where someone can learn more about you, learn more about the NCA, maybe becoming a member, and where someone can follow all that great research again. I know you mentioned it earlier, but now would be a great time for you to summarize that.
Absolutely. If you'd like to learn more about coffee or the association, or you want to join the association, you can find us at ncausa.org. If you'd like to learn more about me personally, professionally, you can check out my LinkedIn profile. There's a lot of Bill Murrays out there, so you might have to search on Bill Murray National Coffee Association. And if you want to just stay up to date, we're on social media. We're on Twitter, which is now X. We're on LinkedIn feeds, and we do put updates on our website. So lots of places you can go to get more information.
That is perfect. And we are starting to share some of the National Coffee Association facts and stats on our Learn page here shortly. So you can also see a couple of those there. So you'll be sure to check it out. Again, thank you so much for joining us, Bill. Love the work you're doing. Keep changing the world. And of course, thank you for helping us unite the world through coffee.
Thank you, Christy. Really appreciate this today. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks to you, our followers, for joining us at U3 Coffee. We'll see you next time.